Through the years 1750 to 1776, British actions led to an all-time high in dissatisfaction in American colonists and eventually led to the Revolution. Here are some bad British policies. The Iron Act. British Parliament passed this in the Trade and Navigation Acts. It removed taxes on iron shipped from the colonies to England, and it was active from 1750 through 1757, and it was in every single one of the colonies. They did this because they wanted an increase in manufacturing in Britain and lowering manufacturing in the colonies. This happened right before the start of the Industrial Revolution, so Britain strategically collected as much metal as they could so they could begin mass manufacturing. The Sugar Act. The British Parliament cut taxes on foreign molasses and kept high taxes on foreign refined sugar and banned all foreign rum. This was from 1764 through 1766. It was in every single one of the colonies. Britain wanted more revenue from the colonies, and this was a time when many colonists got their sugar-based goods from Spanish colonies in South America. They wanted most of the revenue for themselves. And the writs of assistance. And this was passing courts in British America. And courts could instruct law enforcement officers to do a certain act. And this was active from 1755 through 1760, and especially in the Massachusetts Bay Province and eventually to the rest of the colonies. Britain wanted more control over the colonies, and this is time during high smuggling into the colonies, and British wanted to crack down on it. These policies were unfair to the colonists, and this kind of shows why the British actions were so relevant. So British imperial actions did not have the colonists in mind. They were strictly for either increasing power over the colonies or increasing profits to get Britain out of debt. Many of these policies, such as the Stamp Act, were in nature predatory, and it was clear to many colonists at that time that Britain was not on their side. These actions had no upside for colonists, and unrest and happiness brewed in the colonies. This decreased loyalty to the crown and kick-started the resistance against their home country and the push for autonomy. These acts not only dissatisfied the colonists, but they also affected them physically. The colonists protested the Sugar Acts and the Currency Act. Participants in a Massachusetts town meeting cried out against this taxation without representation in Parliament and suggested united protests throughout the colonies. By the end of the year, many colonies were practicing non-importation, a refusal to use imported English goods, and this is from the Library of Congress. These effects led to resistance in the colonies. So after the British got more and more into debt after the French and Indian War, they increased policies that derived money from colonial actions. In 1764, they installed the Sugar Act and the Currency Acts, which were a step above what they'd been doing prior, like the White Pine Acts. This kickstarted colonial opposition. Many of the colonists who had been loyal to Britain at that point began to change their minds and either wanted reforms or autonomy. The following year, British Parliament passed the Quartering and Stamp Acts, which further angered the colonists. Over time, this led to much more radical opposition in the colonies. This is a reason for creation of some of the groups like the Sons of Liberty, a political group in the colonies that worked towards the rights for colonists. These increased harsh taxes led groups like the Sons of Liberty to get violent with British soldiers and officials. Some British acts tried to mend the bond between England and America. This is how some of the British acts made colonist loyalty. So the policies and actions of the British did not really support that, did not really try to keep them loyal, but one single one they had was in the latter half of the 18th century, there was a rule called statutory neglect. This rule stated that many harsh taxes and British rules would not be enforced as long as colonists remained loyal to the crown. Since many of the colonists' main qualms with Britain were unjust taxes, Parliament thought that this would lead to the calming of insurrections in the colonies. Ironically, this gave colonists more autonomy and made more colonists want to separate from Britain. All right. Thank you. A+.